Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Yay for Business podcast. It's me, Courtney Shaw, and this month we're going to be talking about three big mistakes that all service providers are making. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about those three mistakes and, give you some context for them. And then the rest of the episodes this month, the next three episodes after this one, are all going to be deep dives into each of those mistakes and sort of signs that this is happening, ways it comes up, how we see it in our clients, and what to do about it. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so when we launched our high ticket group coaching program, Yay for 100K, way back in the time of April 2020, which feels like 10 years ago, at that time, I already had a lot of experience coaching service providers on packaging and selling their services. And because of the years I'd spent in working in Yay for clients and working with hundreds of entrepreneurs, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was feeling pretty full of myself in terms of my capacity to serve clients around that topic. I thought I had a good idea of where folks were at and what their struggles were. Now, what I learned, and I'm always learning, and I like to share as openly as possible what those lessons are, because I want to normalize realizing that we, thought we knew something and maybe we didn't know it. The mistake I made was this very binary thinking of somebody has a service-based business, they get it booked out, and then they move on to the next step. And that there was this big difference between, either you're booked out with your services or you're not booked out with your services. You're either booking out clients regularly or you're not. And what I found over the last, almost year at this point, 10 months, is that is not really the case. One thing we actually talk about a lot now in Yay for 100K, we have a whole lesson on it at this point, is that being booked out and not being booked out are actually the same problem. Somebody who's booked out, they do have a piece of the puzzle that someone who's not booked out might have, but that's only a marketing piece, right? There's three core pillars of a signature service. You have your marketing, your sales, and your delivery. And this is sort of inside of Yay for 100K, we talk about streamlining each of those three areas of your service. But if you're booked out, all that means is that whatever marketing you're doing, even if it's word of mouth and it's happening automatically, that's working, right? But if you're booked out and you're burnt out, then you might have the marketing in place and you might be booking clients. But oftentimes what we come to find out when we start to work with clients is that your sales system is not streamlined. You might think it is, but it's not. And your delivery system is not streamlined. And then vice versa for the folks who aren't booked out, oftentimes they have a clear service and it's clear to deliver, but their marketing is the piece that's not there. So in essence, it's the same problem for both of those camps. It's the fact that you need to streamline your services. And then the three mistakes we're going to talk about today really fit for whether your services are booking out too much and you're burnt out. Absolutely, these apply to you. And if you're not booking enough clients, these absolutely apply to you. And that's what I found really interesting over the last 10 months is just how much overlap there is between those two kind of things, being booked out or not, that seem like they would indicate that you're at a different level of business, but it doesn't. Okay. So this is what we have found over the last 10 months. What I didn't appreciate back in April 2020 was the extent to which, as service providers, we have a tendency to keep ourselves stuck on a hamster wheel due to the three mistakes, or you can call them traps, really, that I'm going to talk about today. They really are traps. They keep you stuck in where you're at, and you can't get out of where you're at with staying in these traps. Okay. So you could call them mistakes or traps. These 3 mistakes I'm going to talk about, they're not all separate. They're not like 3 different things and I'm just like, okay, here's 3 mistakes that you're making. They are intimately linked. All 3 of these things, they go together. And you can think of them as like fraternal triplets. I'm going to be doing, again, a deep dive episode on each one of them because each one of them, honestly, you could do a $1,000 course on, no problem. I'm going to do a deep dive episode on each one because I just know that you guys need to hear this. And all of these mistakes, okay, this is really key. I want you to listen up here. All of these mistakes, all 3 of them, I believe, stem from the same couple of beliefs and the same conditioning, and particularly for women, okay? As women, we tend to be conditioned in a particular way and receive certain types of messaging, okay? So these 2 beliefs that I think some version of each of these are causing us to get stuck in these traps are, number 1, I'm responsible for other people's happiness. And number 2, my needs are less important than the needs of others. Oof, that's a lot. Okay, that's heavy. And if you like are stopped in your tracks and you're like, ugh, called out, well, that's what I'm here for, my friend. I'm here to call you out in like the most compassionate way possible. It's like a safe space, right? Though I like to joke that my first word was no and that I'm not a people pleaser. And I don't think I struggle with this as much as a lot of people do. The truth is that I too struggle with, if not the beliefs that I'm responsible for other people's happiness, and the belief that my needs are less important than the needs of others, I definitely still have conditioning around that. And there's always layers to peel away here. So I want you to pay attention. Even if you're like, oh, that's not me, I want you to pay attention. Because even some of our clients who are like the tougher cookies, the ones that you're like, they're like, take no shit, all of that. Turns out we've got these mistakes happening because of these beliefs. I know it's wild. It's always there. And it's definitely worth investigating. So here's the truth. If you believe that behaving based on those 2 beliefs, right? Like if you believe that using those beliefs, because like our beliefs are really the foundation of everything we do, right? We don't do anything acting outside of our beliefs or we would experience cognitive dissonance. If you're like, have those beliefs, and you believe that acting on those beliefs and behaving or like based on those beliefs is a good thing, or that it's leading to good results, positive results, then you have no reason to stop doing them, to stop believing those things. You have no reason to stop making the mistakes because you don't even see that they're mistakes. You think that these beliefs are true and you believe that the actions you're taking due to these beliefs are good. Okay, so I want to give you a couple of examples. Number 1, if you believe that you are responsible for other people's emotions and that this is helping you to be successful because you want to make other people happy and you want your clients to be happy and all of that. Like I had a client who said, like, I just want all of my clients to have a positive interactions with my business. And like, I want them to only have positive interactions with my business. And I said, you can't control what they perceive as positive, right? Like I can do something and one person's going to perceive it as great and another person's going to be pissed off about it. Like you can't control that. So as long as you believe that you're responsible for other people's emotions and that it's a good thing and that you should believe that, you have no reason to stop. For example, if you are answering client emails at 11 p.m. because you happen to hop into Gmail and it was there and you saw it and you got all fired up and they're like, I have to respond now because I saw it. And you're afraid that if you don't respond, then the client's going to be mad at you. What you're doing is you are seeing replying to that email as a good thing because you believe you prevented the client from being mad at you. And so you thought, good, I dodged a bullet there. I took care of that. Thank God I saw that email. Like how dare they send it to me so late, but thank God I saw it because I was able to take care of the situation. Like that's what we tell ourselves. So we think that our reaction of going and checking our email at 11 p.m. and not just that, but then like responding to that email at 11 p.m. is actually helping us by avoiding a client being upset with us. Okay? This is not your responsibility, and it's also not the truth. This is a lie. Like all of that is just a straight up lie. The truth is that you are actually training your client to expect you to reply to their emails at all times of day / immediately after they send an email. Okay. So in your interactions with your client, you are training your client how you interact. I had this happen with someone I hired last year. I sent them an email because it was like Friday night and I was thinking about it and I just needed to send the email. And the service provider responded to me in 5 minutes. It was 10 p.m. It was like 9 or 10 p.m. on a Friday night. Okay. That told me, oh, this person's available. Now, I personally don't like to do email at that time, but even me, even the person teaching boundaries, teaching service providers this stuff, I can be a client who sends an email at 10 p.m. Who cares if a client sends an email at 10 p.m.? It doesn't mean they need a response at 10:01 p.m. Okay. If you do that, all that happens is the client's brain subconsciously goes, oh, that's normal. This person responds immediately after emails. Now, in the future, if you don't do that, they will think something is wrong. / people out there who do take a little bit more advantage of client situations are going to get grumpy when you don't. It's just going to set up the relationship. It's going to set up how the relationship is operating. Okay. Now, the second example I have for you, if you believe that other people's needs are more important than your own needs, you will literally sacrifice your well-being, literally, for your clients. And you will do so thinking that that's what is supposed to be done to serve a client. And when the client doesn't bow down in gratitude, I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but seriously, you are going to get resentful that you sacrificed your well-being. So let me use that client example of the person I emailed who responded to me on Friday night. They put the way they perceived my needs, I didn't have a need to receive an email, but they perceived that I had a need to get an email. They put that in front of their need to not be in their email at 11 p.m. on a Friday or whatever time. And then what happens, and I'm not talking about this person particularly that this happened, but I work with plenty of service providers. This happens all the time. Then that person could get resentful that I don't go, oh my God, thank you so much for getting back to me so quickly or whatever. So when we bend over backwards for clients and we put their needs in front of ours, we start to expect a parade every time we do something. But the client isn't asking for that. We are perceiving that the client is asking for that and they are not. And we are also perceiving that we need to go to that extent, sacrifice ourselves to deliver a good service, which we do not. And then we get resentful, tired, and burnt out when we don't receive like kudos and kisses and hugs and words of validation at every turn. Okay. Again, because you've normalized this. You've taught them that's how you work. And so they don't know that you're going above and beyond. They just think this is how this person operates, right? Like, how are they to know? That's not their responsibility. Okay. So on this same example, it makes you tired and resentful when you sacrifice of yourself for your clients. But here's the thing. It doesn't make you a good service provider. It actually makes you a bad service provider. It makes you a shitty service provider. Why? Because when you're tired and resentful, when you're overworked, when you're not taking care of yourself, when you're not pouring into your own cup, you actually produce lower quality work. You're less of a joy to work with. You're inefficient and you're going to upset your clients that way. So when you think, oh, I got to answer the email at 11 p.m., what I'm going to say is answering that email is a disservice to your client. That is how you are hurting your client, by taking your time and energy to do that instead of pouring it into what you need in order to show up to do your work for the client that they actually need. Taking care of your needs is the best way for you to take care of your clients. And this is on you. Like, this is 100% on you, which is great because it means you can do something about it. You don't need all your clients to change how they're behaving. What you need is for you to set up some better boundaries, which we're going to talk about. Okay, so that's a great little segue. Those are just a couple examples of how those two beliefs that I mentioned, right? Those beliefs being, I am responsible for other people's happiness and my needs are less important than the needs of others. Those are just two ways that those beliefs can show up in a service provider's work that can start to create this hamster wheel, to start to create these traps, okay? And so I wanted to give those illustrations first. Now that you can see how that works, let's talk about those 3 mistakes. What are the 3 traps that those beliefs get us into? All right, and these 3 mistakes, again, each one of these, I'm going to do a deep dive episode about in February, okay? So mistake number 1 is pricing. underpricing specifically. Mistake number 2 is people pleasing. And mistake number 3 is shitty boundaries, but really just boundaries. Okay. No boundaries, bad boundaries, lack of boundaries. All right. So let's go through these briefly. Mistake number 1, pricing. Money is, I've heard this metaphor used by a couple of different people I follow, and I like both of these. Like, money is like water to your business. It's like the oxygen. It's like the blood that runs through your business's veins. It's necessary for survival. If you're listening to this, you are not running a nonprofit. Like, I don't work with nonprofits. I don't know like that much about nonprofits. I work with clients who work with nonprofits, and then you guys have to be extra careful because those of you who work with nonprofits, you tend to like have the nonprofit mindset. You're not a nonprofit. You're a business owner. So you got to be really clear about that. Money is also the lifeblood of a nonprofit too. It just looks a little bit different. Again, I don't know a lot about nonprofits, so I'm not going to get into that. All right. You are not above, you are not better than oxygen, water, blood. Like, you need those things to survive, and your business needs those things to survive. So it's in your best interest, like, and like literally as a human, it is your best interest to maximize your oxygen intake, right? Like, you want to make sure that your body is running efficiently. Now, your body is like a nonprofit in that it's not going to like store things. It's like constantly running. It's not taking a profit. I think this metaphor is breaking down. But the core piece of this metaphor I want to get across is that money is to your business what oxygen is to your body, or blood is to your body, or water is to your body, whichever one of those anyone will do. As a business owner, you're responsible for ensuring that your business has money in it to operate. So money, you can like cash flow, you can really think about as like blood flow. Like, if your business has heart disease or a blood clot, right? Like, it's going to have issues with cash flow, right? So we need to make sure that money is flowing through the business really easily. And one of the biggest ways that business owners, especially newer business owners, especially service providers, can really clog up that flow is by their pricing, is by not aligning pricing with goals, not calculating goals, not looking at what makes sense in terms of like the workload involved for how many, like, you're working with your clients, for having a service that you can price in the first place. So like offering a hodgepodge of different things, or offering different services. We want to make sure we have one signature service so that we can focus on pumping that out and getting cash into the business. Again, like, I'm going to go on with this metaphor a little bit more of oxygen, because if you think about it, like plants, trees, they breathe in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. Like, to them, our like waste is their like thing that they need, right? And vice versa for us. Well, it's like you and your clients. The thing that you need from them, the money, is not what they need. They need the service. They need that value. So we need that constant exchange that has to flow. Just like, I'm loving this metaphor. I don't know. I've never heard this before. But it seems obvious, right? Once you start going down that pathway, that if you start hoarding money, or you start like not being willing to hire people for good rates and things like that, or you're not going out there and marketing your services, you're not pricing your services high enough, then you're going to get like a blood clot in your business, essentially. Okay. So low pricing straight up is a sign of money mindset blocks. If you don't like that term, it's fine, but like, just try to find a term that you're okay with, limiting beliefs, whatever it is. Straight up, low pricing is a sign of that. And you can say, no, it's not. I want to be accessible. No, it's not. I just don't care that much about money. No, it's not. Da, da, da. And I hear you on all those things. I've said all of those things. I'm not against like accessibility. I'm not against like not worrying about money and being obsessed with money. But I think swinging the pendulum so far that you aren't making enough money for your business to breathe, right? To have the oxygen it needs, that is going to kill your business. So you don't have to be obsessed with money, nor do you have to be obsessed with oxygen, but your business needs money to survive, and you can't price your services at $25 or whatever. I'm just throwing out a random number, and expect your business to survive. Like, you're not an employee in a company, you're running a business. So you are responsible for ensuring that the rate that you're charging makes sense for what you're providing. Okay. one of the ways that this mindset comes up is really in zero-sum thinking. So if I gain, someone else has to lose, right? I hate this way of thinking. It's not how I'm wired. I'm all about win-win situations. So I always try to figure out, like, how does it work best for everybody? And that's why I brought up that metaphor of, yes, somebody is paying you good money, what that service is worth to work with you. It has to be what that service is worth value-wise to the result they're getting, because it needs to be an equal exchange, just like we breathe in the oxygen and breathe out the carbon dioxide. Like, same exact thing. And then the plants will take in the carbon dioxide and turn it back into oxygen. That's how it works. It's a cycle. Same thing with money. This is just a fact. So this has to happen, that you have to get rid of this belief that if I gain, someone else has to lose, or if someone's paying me, like, I have to like bend over backwards and do a million cartwheels for them. No, they're paying you because you're worth being paid for your work. Okay. And then that's a whole other can of worms we can open up later. All right. So another example of this comes up in with our clients as well when they do market research surveys. So I just talked about this on a Yay for 100K call this past week. We had somebody ask, like, if I'm doing a market research survey, should I give a gift to the people to thank them for their time? And it sounds like such a nice thing to do, right? Like, nobody's going to be like, oh my God, you terrible person. Why would you want to give someone a gift? But what I said was, no, don't give them a gift. Please don't give them a gift. Not because giving a gift is a bad thing. And this could I'm laughing because this kind of gets us into mistake number 2, which is people pleasing. Giving a gift isn't a bad thing, but where is it coming from? Are you giving this gift because you feel bad taking their time? And because I've worked with hundreds of service providers over the last 4 years, I know that this happens a lot when people do market research calls, is they feel like, oh my God, I'm taking up someone's time. I should give them something. I'm like, no. The free call with you is the thing you're giving them. These are people who, and the way I teach it, right? It's not just like random people. The way we teach people to do market research calls, you are reaching out to people who've already expressed an explicit interest in what you do. Like, they've literally said, yes, this is my problem. Yes, I want to do this. Yes, I'd love to talk to you. And just by talking to you for 30 minutes, that is valuable for them. Like, if I, for example, if I was having like a chronic health problem and a naturopath was offering a 30-minute session to hear more about my situation, I wouldn't expect her to give me a gift. I'd be like, that is a gift. Like, thank you for taking 30 minutes to talk to me. So we need to really reframe the way you're thinking about this, because the reason why it's a problem now, it's like, oh, well, so what if they give them a free PDF? Like, who does that really hurt? Nothing right now. But what it does is it reinforces this belief that you're not worth paying for just your time, and you have to give people gifts to be on a phone with you. What are you going to do when you're actually charging people to be on the phone with you? Like, that's what I start to worry about. So we need to nip that in the bud as fast as possible. Another way this shows up is undercharging because you are so worried about it being affordable, you haven't actually looked at what it costs for you to offer the service. Now, this is a calculator that we give our Yay for 100K clients. We give them a client workload calculator so they can figure out how many clients can you actually take on. What is your actual bandwidth? It's very simple, but there's some hard and fast rules here. And based on that, what do you need to charge in order to make your financial goal? Like, it's very simple math, but you have to do that math. And then the final way that I see this coming up before I move on to mistake number 2, and we'll talk so much more about pricing in next week's episode, will be all about pricing mistakes and how to do pricing, but is trying to price services without clarity. So it's just like, oh, what should I charge for this? Well, what is this? What's included? Well, I haven't quite figured it out. Well, I can't help you price something that we don't know what it is. Okay. So, you've got to get clarity. We had a client, she wanted to take on some extra work, working for another company. And she was like, this feels like something I want to do right now. And I was like, that's fine. Like, if that's something you want to do to make some money, go for it. And she said, what should I charge? I'm not sure what to charge. I don't know where to start. And I'm like, well, are you clear on what they're asking for? What do they want you to do specifically? Not generally, like, oh, they want copywriting. How much? What's the turnaround? Like, you guys need to have a very clear conversation about this. You can't possibly charge for that. So a lot of mistakes around pricing come around not being clear on what's actually included. Okay, the second mistake is people pleasing, as I already mentioned. So people pleasing, near and dear to my heart. I love coaching people pleasers so much. It's some of the most powerful work I think you can do as a coach, because people pleasing is one of the most detrimental behaviors. People think it's good. Like they genuinely think it's good, and they genuinely think they're trying to be good people. And the truth is, when you're people pleasing, you're not trying to make other people happy. You're trying to get other people to like you. It's not about them. And the second you realize that is the second that you're able to start letting it go. Okay? Not magic pill, but like start letting it go. So that's the first thing. It's not about making other people happy. It's about getting people to like you. People pleasing is actually very selfish and egotistical. It is. I'm not saying you're selfish and egotistical, but that behavior is a pattern that is selfish and egotistical. And it's really not about telling you to stop people pleasing, because people be like, oh, I need to stop people pleasing. That's not what it's about. That's like, oh man, there's all these dandelions. I need to get rid of them, and just like snipping the tops off of them. Like that's not going to do anything. They're just going to grow back. And I really don't know how dandelions work, but they seem to pop up everywhere. Anyway, that's just snipping off the like top of the problem. It's not getting it at the root. So we need to address the underlying beliefs that are causing you to be people pleasers. We will talk about this 2 episodes from now. Okay. So not next week, but the week after, we'll go a lot deeper in this. So briefly, what I want to say here, just again, to show you what I mean by like, we need to go deeper, is we're not going to solve the problem at the level of the behavior, right? The behavior is the people pleasing. We can't solve that. That's just going to make you angry and uncomfortable, and feel awful. We need to go a step deeper. So this is kind of like an NLP concept, and I'm not trained in NLP, but this is sort of like a piece of it that I've learned. And I think it's really useful for this particular point that I'm trying to make. So the idea is like, there's different levels of things, things in general. And there's a bunch of levels, but I'm just going to talk about 3 of those levels right now. The most superficial one being the behavior. Okay, so let's say the behavior of people pleasing is responding to client emails at 11:37 p.m. on a Friday while at the bar, right? Just a totally ridiculous thing to do, because you're just worried that, oh, but I have to answer this, like, because my client needs this. Like, no, you don't. You never need to answer that. Never. I don't care if their wedding is tomorrow. You don't need to answer that. Like, no. Okay, that's the behavior. That's the thing you're doing. It's the action you're taking. Let's go a step deeper. The belief. What is the belief that's causing you to behave that way, right? To take that action. So a belief could be, nice people, good service providers do whatever their clients ask them to do. Okay. I believe that good service providers do whatever their clients ask them to do. And then the next level is the identity, which is, I'm a good person. I'm a nice person, right? I'm a nice person. Nice people do whatever their clients want them to do. So I'm going to respond to this client email at 11:37 p.m. Because if I don't, then the client's not going to like me because I'm not nice, right? Because then it's like, look at the antithesis of that. If I don't do this, I'm not nice, which then means my client's going to hate me, which then means my reputation's going to be ruined. Do you see how fast this spirals out? If I don't take this action, there's a lot on the line. So just like cutting it off of the behavior is going to make you have a panic attack. All right. What we need to do is start at the belief. Now, the identity level is, I'm a nice person. I don't think that's a problem. Like, I'm not going to we don't need to reprogram that. I think that's a fine belief or identity to have. The problem is the belief that nice people do whatever their clients need them to do. Like they follow whatever client whims. They respond to all client emails. That's what a nice person would do. That's what we have to restructure. The truth is, you are a nice person, and that's fine. But if you answer that email at 11:37 p.m., what's going to happen? You're training your client that you're in email that late. You think that's going to make your client happy. Let me put it this way. It might make your client feel guilty or worried that you're answering emails that late. They might feel like, oh my God, she's an email that late. She must be really unorganized, right? So you've assumed that this action is going to make them happy, which you have no control over anyway. And it actually has a different effect. And I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10, it doesn't make them happy. It does have a different effect. They are not expecting that. And that if you're working with people who are expecting that, well, you're just perpetuating bad behavior, right? Okay, so here's an example of this is we have a client who has had a issue of saying yes to working with people and then feeling like she had to back out of it because she realized they weren't a good fit. And one thing that came up was one of the people who she was wanted to back out of working with, and it didn't get that far down. It was just like this person inquired, she gave them the package, and then this person was trying to like barter with her. And I was like, nah, we don't do that. Weird behavior. But also they're allowed to do that, and you're allowed to say, no, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. Here's what she felt like. If I say no to this potential client, they were referred to me by a client I have. So what's going to happen is I'm going to tell this person, I don't think we're a good fit to work together. They're going to go to their friend who's my client and tell them how mean I am, right? Because I'm not a nice person, because I didn't do whatever they wanted. And then that client is not going to like me. And I thought that was so interesting because number one, usually people don't personally know the people they refer people to, right? Like just because someone referred someone to you doesn't mean they have a relationship with that person. They might have just DM'd them on Instagram and said, hey, do you know someone who does this, or who does this for you? And then they were like, oh, so-and-so referred me to you. So like, there's no necessarily relationship there. And the other thing being, like, this person isn't a good fit for you. And if you took them on, wouldn't that show that you're out of integrity? Like, couldn't have the opposite effect on your current client of like, ooh, that's an out of integrity decision, right? Furthermore, there's an assumption that your current client, their entire opinion on you is based on what this random other person says, not on their own lived experience of working with you. So this is how we start to dismantle these behaviors. Another example before I get to mistake number 3 is we had another client, similar situation. She had a client that she wanted to fire. This client that was very abusive to her, and she was afraid that if she fired this client or she ended this working relationship, that this abusive client was going to quote unquote ruin her reputation. These are unfounded fears, right? I've had that come up before too, though, but let's dig in on that. What do we even mean by ruin your reputation? So if you ever had that fear, like, oh my God, if I do this, like someone's going to ruin my reputation. They're going to get mad at me and like ruin my name on the internet. Like what specifically are you afraid that they're going to do? Are they going to start a thread on Facebook telling everyone not to work with you? Okay, like let's go there. So let's say that happens. Do you really think that, first of all, have you ever seen anyone do that? Because I've never seen anyone just be like, don't work with this person. They might have a reason, but I still haven't really, unless someone like stole from someone, or I've never seen that happen. I have had a friend who had someone like make a website to like attack her business, but it's like, then that person just looked crazy. Like that person just looked like their reputation ruined. So it just like doesn't really do anything. Like it's not a real thing. I've never seen anyone just flat out ruin someone else's reputation online without that person doing something like really like bad. And even then I don't even think I've seen that happen. So I've seen people go through hard things and like wake up calls in their business, but ruin your reputation, not a thing. Okay. So let's get into mistake number 3, which is not having boundaries or not having the boundaries that you need as a service provider. Boundaries in general are all about protecting your energy, your energetic space, your emotions, whatever, your time, whatever it is, your energy, and not taking on other people's shit and not allowing other people to like ruin your day or like get in your space or anything like that. Okay. It's about protecting yourself so that you can be a full human being who can show up where you need to show up for other people. Very important, absolutely essential. You can't not have these boundaries. Okay. So here's some places that boundaries can come into play. And we're going to talk about this at the last episode in February, okay? Communication methods. So how do you communicate? How? Like how and where? In email, Slack, Voxer, Instagram messages. You can have boundaries on each of these things. Like I have a boundary. I don't do Voxer. I have a boundary. I don't do voicemail. My voicemail literally says, don't leave me a voicemail. And here's the great thing. I get voicemails and I know I don't have to listen to them because that person literally listened to me say, I don't check voicemail. Do not leave me one. Instead, send me a text or an email. And they still left me a voicemail. So why would I listen to it? Why? Now, the Apple Store, no matter what, they will leave you a voicemail. But, whatever. So how do you do communication? Slack. We have someone on our team who realized she was in Slack all day and she had to set a boundary around like, I'm only slacking. I'm only checking Slack twice a day. I was like, awesome. Sounds great. Good for you. That looks to me like that's someone who's like got their shit together, right? Not like, oh, how dare she like set a boundary. Okay. The second kind of place that boundaries can come up for you are response times. So I love to have an autoresponder. We have one for our business in general that just sets that expectation around response times. Like, here's how long it takes us to get back to email. And my personal email, I basically say like, I suck at email. So if you don't hear from me and you really need a response, like try poking me again in a few days. That's my boundary. It might sound ridiculous to you, but that's my boundary. Scope of work. What's included in the package? What's not? Just be clear about that. That's it. The more clear you are up front, the easier it's going to be. It's when you're not clear up front and then someone thought something was included that wasn't, that's when you're going to have a problem. Okay. Cancellation policies. We just had to up this for calls that we do because we had a bunch of people canceling on us, and it's not their fault. Our system just like changed somehow and was letting people cancel at the last minute. So we updated that, and then we shared a communication with all of our clients and said, hey, here's our updated cancellation policy. Here's why. Again, communicate the boundary. We'll talk about that in a second. Your work hours. I don't take meetings before 10 a.m. And I'm well aware that I live in Pacific time, and that is 1 p.m. Eastern. And that is late for Europeans. And occasionally I will take a meeting before 10 a.m., but as a rule, I do not. A boundary on the type of client you'll work with. What are your requirements for your clients to work with you? This is something we teach inside of Yay for 100K, is how to have a filter for who you say yes to and who you say no to. So how boundary problems might manifest is, number one, making your clients' problems your problems, i.e. taking on other people's energy. I'm going to say this once. I will say it again. Your client's lack of planning is not your emergency. Okay? Picking up your kids from school is not an emergency. We already know that's a thing, right? Stop checking your email. I'm just going to end it there. Just stop checking your email. Seriously. Stop checking your email at times that you're not equipped to handle what's in there anyway. Like, just stop. So what I would do is I would schedule a couple times per day to actually go through email. Now, I don't even really do email. I go through my email on Monday and that's it. And that's that. I'm fine with that. Your clients are adults. Don't infantilize them. Okay. Here's what I mean by that. There are parents out there who do everything for their kids, and they do it out of love. Sometimes, usually, they do it out of love. But what it does is it teaches their kids that they're not capable of doing things themselves, that they can't handle doing it. And this is very disempowering, okay? And you might have clients who are like this. You might be someone who's like this. This is like a very common thing, right? It might come from love, right? Like they want to do things for you, but it's harmful if you don't learn how to do things yourself. So don't do that to your clients. Don't do things for them or handle their problems for them or take on their problems for them when it's not your problem. You're turning them into a child. You're disempowering them. That's not cool. Don't do that. Allow them to take responsibility for their own messes and know where you end and they begin. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about boundaries wise is quantity of work, because this is one where we really realized in the last 10 months that our clients have a tendency to not actually know how many clients they can take on. They think they kind of think they do a lot of times, but they don't. And they also haven't looked at the relationship between their client capacity and their pricing. So like, can you even hit your financial goal with the amount of clients you can take on? And we have clients who will just consistently, and I've been like this before too, and I have friends like this who they just think they can be more and more efficient. Like, I just need to be more efficient. Like, I can take on as many clients as I want. I just have to be more efficient. I just have to work more hours. And then what ends up happening is they start like working on their business on the weekend, and like the client work takes over everything. And I have a podcast episode called Schedule Smackdown for service providers that you are going to need to listen to if this is you. Can't remember which number it is right now, but it's one of the earlier episodes. And you need to figure out what your client workload is and what your schedule is for working on your client work. That is a boundary. Your schedule is a boundary. Now, here's the last thing I want to say about this before we get into the full episode on client boundaries. If you set boundaries and then you don't communicate them or you don't enforce them when they've been breached, then you don't have boundaries. You have wishes. Okay? So do you want to set wishes or boundaries? It is very easy to decide what you want your boundaries to be and very challenging to enforce them. But they're not a boundary until you enforce them, whether that's on yourself or your clients, a team member, anyone. And By the way, enforcing a boundary, I don't want this to be like you're like a soldier with a gun, like going, it's not like a violent thing. It can be very subtle. In fact, people might not even realize you're setting a boundary a lot of times. So like we'll talk more about that in the last episode of February. Okay, so as a reminder, next week we're going to do a deep dive on how to price your services and like the full process behind that. So we talked about like what's going on today, some examples of that. We'll talk about like once you have a good price for your service, what to do about the mindset stuff that comes up. So if you have that belief like, oh, no one's going to pay for it that price, or I can't get clients to pay that much, or whatever it is, we're going to talk about that too. That's where the real work is. In the meantime, if this stuff is just right up your alley and you're ready to just like dive in and start like taking action and making progress, then I would love to have you join us inside of Yay for 100K. So go ahead and apply over at CourtneyShaw.com/apply. And you can get all the information there too. If you're like not sure if it's a good fit, I just always say like it's best to apply anyway, because my team can assess if it looks like a good fit or not. And we send a very personalized, very thorough email to you after you apply, no matter what our recommendation is. So you might as well do that. I feel like that's like a valuable thing just to experience. So go ahead and head over there, and I will chat with you guys next week. Yay! Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you love today's content and are ready to finally start making a full-time income from your business this year, make sure to get on the wait list for my program, Yay for Clients, over at yayforclients.com, and you'll be notified the next time enrollment is open. Or if you're already booked with clients and you want to learn how you can turn your signature service into a signature program and add 100K of revenue to your bottom line, come apply to my group coaching program, Yay for 100K, over at CourtneyShaw.com/apply. Thanks again, and have an awesome day.